Oh, today I thought I'd look at a smaller game. These capsular, pocket games. There's many from like Task Force games, some from Metagaming, and SPI and other game producers as well. The smaller games, which are often from Metagaming, their micro games are 4 by 7 inches, and then the ones that are like a little bit bigger, from Task Force games, for instance, like Intruder, is 5.5 by 8.5. But they're all paperback and self-contained with a card of counters and a map generally. Thought today I'd look at Hotspot from Metagaming. It's their micro game number 15. Seemed kind of interesting. It seems like there's some asymmetric opponents and some movement and that sort of thing. So I thought I'd check it out. Here's cover art, well done by Pat Heidi in looks like 79. Shows the the molten planet where the action's occurring, a couple ships going down. Well done. What's interesting about some of these pocket games too, the original price is $2.95, and sometimes if you're lucky on eBay you can even get these games for close to the original price. A little bit of theme on the background and a nice sketch. Kairos is a molten planetary hell. It was also a vital production center that the technocrat rebels had to capture. Hotspot is a tactical game about the technocrat raid on Kairos. The Ziegler Corporations maintains fragile floating platforms called crustals that move through the molten rock. The crustals are defended by infantry and hovercraft. The technocrat attackers are strong, but they must capture crustals quickly before their attack platforms break up and their units melt into the lava. You decide the outcome in this fun and exciting game. Includes a playing map, the rules, and counters for the crustals and combat units. It's always nice when they provide some background. The Technocrat Rebellion began on the world Gershwin, home of the Confederation 8th Fleet. The Technocrats were mostly scientists and technicians who rebelled against a strict discipline of the Confederation autocracy. The Confederation was swift to retaliate. The Confederation Grand Fleet met the rebels' forces in the vicinity of Enfolgar and smashed by near numbers alone. The Technocrats fought a delaying action as they evacuated families and sympathizers. But the Technocrat fleet could not carry enough fuel to complete their exodus. Somewhere, somehow, more fuel would need to be found. Kairos was a major fuel depot. The high-gravity world was entirely made of molten rock. Workstations were located on man-made structures known as crustals. Hotspot simulates the Technocrat assault on Kairos. The Ziegler Corporation has the advantage of controlling the movement of the crustals that float through the molten rock. The Technocrats have attack platforms that also can move through molten rock, but these only last for 4 turns. And there's some nice artwork in the book as well. So I'm getting ready for the combat, I guess. Showing a battle scene. Game designed by W.G. Armentrout, edited by Keith Gross, art by Pat Heidi, copy editing by Donna Baker, playtesters shown there. Here's all the counters to give you a sense of how many there are. It's moderate amount, and they're about they're 7/16 by 7/16, and they're thin thin cardstock. So that's the military counters. Then you have the crustals and the motion platforms, which are hexagonal. The unique counters, there's the crustals and then the attack platforms. These are the hexagonal ones. There's also the central crustal, but that's not mobile. Of the mobile ones, you have a single hex, a 2 hex, a 3 hex, kind of grouped together, and then a 3 long hex. Then the attack platform is 1 hex for the Technocrats. For the crustals, there's a letter indicating which one it is, number for the damage rating, and then where the letter is the front facing hex. For the attack platforms, there's a 2 indicating its damage rating. So the white background are the Ziegler units, and the brown background are the Technocrat units. N is the neutralization marker. That indicates when a crustal is neutralized. In several of the combat units, you have the attack strength, the defense strength, and the movement allowance. This is Ziegler hovercraft. Each counter represents a trio of light hovercraft. Armament consists of machine guns and light beamers. These are the Ziegler infantry. Each attack factor consists of 20 men. They're hired mercenaries equipped with lightweight environment suits. Weapons are limited to small arms and portable beamers. And it's 1 squad, 2 squads, and 3 squad groupings. Technocrat heavy beamers. It's a modified version of a traditional light assault tank. Most armor has been stripped as a concession to weight. Machine guns are mounted on the sides. Humans are required to supplement the abilities of the onboard computer. Each con represents 1 heavy beamer. Technocrat infantry. Each attack factor comprises 10 men. They're elite fighting men. The Technocrat infantry is equipped as the Ziegler forces, except for clothing. The Technocrats are suited in bulky, jury-rigged protection suits. And they each comprise of different numbers of squads. Crawlers. They're robotic all-terrain vehicles. They travel on tracks and are built low to the ground to escape fire. Each con represents 2 crawlers. Then Technocrat engineer squads. Engineer squad consists of 10 men, along with 2 all-terrain vehicles. The vehicles contain equipment detecting devices to locate crustal control centers, which are below the surface of the crustals. One thing I'm not super happy with the color scheme. I think they could have done, maybe chose different colors. The background is fine on the map, but brown and white I don't know if it really works. Just for fun, if you look for instance at a color wheel, like the opposite of the yellowish might be like a violet, so maybe like a violet would have worked. Or maybe focusing on the suits being a lighter color to reflect light and heat. That might have been a good thing. But maybe something other than the brown and white. And as is typical for a capsule game, there's no dice included, so I'll just use an old SPI die. And you also need to have some paper to keep track of notes. And here's the map. It's a kind of a thickish paper, about 12¼ inches by 23½ inches. And the central crustal is the hex is right here in the middle of the board, and the rest represents the molten surface. I don't think they had to put hotspot quite so prominently there. They might have maybe wanted to scale that back a little bit. Then they always like when they have the information you need on a table. So there's combat results table here, crustal damage chart, crustal control chart, close infantry assault table result. Then we'll get into setup and play. Going through the rules here. Preparation for play. One player commands the Technocratic Invasion Force, while the other player controls the Ziegler Corporation Defense Forces. Ziegler setup. The Ziegler player begins with 18 hexes of crustals, not counting the central crustal, of any types, 42 attack factors of infantry, and 6 hovercraft units. Crustals are placed in any molten hexes. Infantry and hovercraft are then placed on central crustal and the mobile crustals. Technocrat setup. The Technocrat player begins with 5 attack platforms, 24 attack factors of infantry, 3 engineer squads, 6 crawlers, and 2 heavy beamers. The ground units are divided among the attack platforms. After the Ziegler player has finished setting up, the attack platforms are placed in molten hexes on the perimeter of the map. Game turn sequence. Each turn consists of the following phases. A. Ziegler crystal movement. The Ziegler player may move his crystals. If collisions occur, damage is determined. B. Ziegler regular movement. The Ziegler player may move his infantry and hovercraft. If overstacking occurs, crustal damage is determined. Ziegler combat. Combat occurs between Ziegler and Technocrat units in the same hex. Ziegler second movement. Ziegler hovercraft may move again. If overstacking occurs, crustal damage is determined. Technocrat crustal and attack platform movement. The Technocrat player may move crustals that he has taken control of and also his attack platforms. If collisions occur between crustals, damage is rolled for. Technocrat regular movement. The Technocrat player may move his ground units. If overstacking occurs, damage is rolled for. 4. Technocrat combat. Combat occurs between Technocrat and Ziegler units in the same hex. Crustal control. Technocrat engineers may attempt to take control of Ziegler crustals. Crustals and attack platforms may break up. Victory conditions. The Technocrat player wins when an engineer squad takes control of central crustal. The Ziegler player wins by eliminating all Technocrat engineers, or otherwise making a Technocrat victory impossible. The game continues until one of the players meets his victory conditions. Crustal movement, general. This section of rules applies only to crustals and attack platforms, not to infantry, hovercraft, engineers, crawlers, or heavy beamers. This section also does not apply to central crustal, which cannot move. Terrain. Crustal and attack platforms may move in and through any molten hex of the map. Only one crustal or attack platform is allowed per hex. 1 hex crustal movement. A 1 hex crustal may move up to 3 hexes each turn in any direction or combination of directions. 2 hex crustal movement. A 2 hex crustal has a front end marker on its counter. In a turn, a 2 hex crustal may A. move 2 hexes in a straight line in the forward direction, or B. move its front hex 1 hex in the forward direction and swing its rear hex into one of the 2 molten hexes which are adjacent to both the new front hex and the old front hex. It may not move 1 hex without turning. Examples shown there. Triangular 3x crustal movement. The triangular 3-hex crustal in one turn may A. move 1 hex in any direction while keeping its 3 hexes in the same position relative to the other, or B. rotate 120 degrees, as shown there. Long 3x crustal movement. The long 3x crustal, like the 2x crustal, has a front end. In a turn, a long 3x crustal may A. move 2 hexes in a straight line in the forward direction, or B. rotate 60 degrees such that the center hex remains in place and each of the other 2 hexes move 1 hex. It may not move 1 hex forward. B is as shown there. Attack platforms. Attack platforms may move up to 4 hexes each turn in any direction or combination of directions. Non-movement. A crustal is never forced to move. A player may move some, none, or all of his crustals and attack platforms each turn. Crustals may not enter or attempt to enter molten hexes occupied by other crustals. A crustal may not move if all hexes that it could legally enter are occupied. Leaving the map. Attack platforms and crustals that entirely leave the map are out of play for the rest of the game. Crustals that are partially off the map automatically break up during the next crustal control phase. First turn. The first turn of the game, 1 hex crustals may only move 1 hex. Attack platforms and other crustals may move normally. Collisions, zones of contact. Each crustal, including central crustal, and each attack platform exerts a zone of contact into each adjacent molten hex. If another crustal or attack platform enters one of those hexes, a collision has occurred. Number of collisions. One collision is considered to have occurred for every hex in which a crustal or attack platform has moved adjacent to another crustal or attack platform, or to more than one crustal or attack platform. If no movement occurred, no collisions. Loss of motion. As soon as a collision has occurred, all movement for the moving crustal is ended for that crustal movement phase. Unused movement is lost. 2 hex and long 3 hex crustals may move only 1 hex forward if they collide on the first hex, even though they must ordinarily move 2 hexes forward. 2 hex crustals may turn when they move 1 hex and collide, although they do not have to. Damage. In every collision, a die is rolled for each crustal involved to see if it is damaged. Exception. Attack platforms may move adjacent to other attack platforms without collisions. The central crustal never receives damage from collisions, although crustals or attack platforms which collide with it may be damaged. There's an example. And there's more examples. Regular movement, general. Each infantry, hovercraft, crawler, heavy beamer, or engineer unit has a movement allowance printed on the counter. During a regular movement phase, a unit may move through a number of consecutive hexes equal to or less than its movement allowance. Units are not required to move in every turn. They do not have to move their entire movement allowance. Unused movement cannot be saved for next turn. Terrain. Units covered in this rule section must move on top of crystals, attack platforms, or the central crustal. Units moved directly into molten hexes are destroyed. Enemy units. When a unit enters a hex containing enemy units, an attack is initiated. The friendly units lose the rest of their movement for that turn. Combat is resolved in the combat phase. Exception is overruns. Stacking. Crustals. A single player may not have more than 9 units in 1 hex of a crustal. The total of counters in 1 hex of a crustal for both players may not exceed 12. Attack platforms. No more than 9 units of either or both sides may be placed on an attack platform. Stress. If more than 6 units are in 1 crustal hex or on 1 attack platform at the end of a regular movement phase or because of retreats, the crustal may be damaged. Central crustal. The crustal stacking limit applies to central crustal. However, central crustal never suffers damage from overstacking. Reconnaissance. A player may not examine the opponent's stacks until he has a unit in that hex to attack it. Infantry breakdowns. Infantry units of each side come in 3 sizes: 1 squad, 2 squads, and 3 squads. Each Ziegler infantry squad has attack and defense factors of 2. Thus, a 2-squad unit is worth either 3 or 6. However, each infantry counter commits as 1 unit for purposes of stacking, regardless of how many squads it represents. 2 and 3 squad units may break down into several smaller units, and small units may combine into larger ones at any point during the owning player's regular movement phase. 2 and 3 squad units may also break down as a result of casualties. Overruns and close infantry assaults. Overruns. Technocrat crawlers and heavy beamers may move through hexes which contain only Ziegler infantry without stopping. An attack is not initiated if the technocrat units leave the hex that turn. The infantry is not eliminated. Close infantry assaults. Ziegler infantry units which are being overrun by technocrat units have the option of conducting close infantry assaults. These are conducted during the technocrat movement phase. The Ziegler player may roll 1 die for every overrunning unit as it moves through the hex, regardless of the number of defending infantry, and consults the close infantry assault chart. Combat. General. Combat must be initiated when friendly units enter hexes containing enemy units, with the exception of overruns. Combat is resolved in the combat phase following that movement phase. Attack factors. The attack factor is printed in the upper left corner of the counters. If a counter has no number printed on it, it may not attack. It may not move into hexes containing enemy counters, even if occupied by friendly units. Defense Defense factors. The defense factor is printed in the upper right corner of the counters. If a counter has no printed defense factor, it is automatically eliminated by any enemy attack if it is not stacked with a friendly unit. Such units do not add anything to the defense or of friendly units in their hex, but are eliminated if all of these friendly units are eliminated. Procedure. The attacking player totals the attack factors of his units in the contested hex. The defending player totals the defense factor of his units in that same hex. Then an odds ratio is computed by dividing the total attack factors by the total defense factor. The ratio is rounded off in the defender's favor to one of the simplified odds ratios shown in the combat results table. After a determination of the odds ratio, a die is rolled. The corresponding line of proper column of the combat results table is consulted and the results are applied. Combat results, no effect. The attack has failed. Attacking units must retreat. C. The defender must lose 1 infantry squad, 1 Ziegler or 2 technocrat attack factors. Non-infantry units are unaffected. If the defender has not been eliminated, the attacking units must retreat. X. All defending units are eliminated. Attacking units remain in the hex. Retreat. When attacking units are not able to eliminate all defending units in the hex, the attacking units must retreat. Retreats are done immediately after that combat has been resolved. Retreating units must move 1 hex in the direction from which they attacked. Retreats may not be made into hexes containing enemy units. If more than 9 units are in a hex after retreating, the owning player must eliminate the excess units from among the retreating units. If more than 6 units are in a hex, crustal damage may be rolled for. Attack order. The attacking player may resolve the attacks in any order he wishes. Hovercraft second movement. After the Ziegler player has completed his combat phase, he may move his hovercraft a second time. Hovercraft may move in both of the Ziegler player's movement phases. Hovercraft movement in the second movement phase is limited to 3 hexes. Stress. If hovercraft movement results in more than 6 units in a crustal hex, damage must be rolled for. However, if this hex was already rolled for during the regular movement, it is not rolled for again. Attacking. Hovercraft may not enter hexes containing enemy units other than technocrat engineer squads during their second movement. Crustal damage and breakup. Crustal damage. Each player must use scratch paper to keep track of the damage sustained by the crustals or attack platforms under his control. Crustals and attack platforms will break up when they have sustained too much damage. Stress. Stress occurs when more than 6 counters are located in a crustal hex or an attack platform. The player who owns a crustal or attack platform must immediately roll 1 die. If 1 is rolled, he must mark in his record sheet that crustal or attack platform that 1 point of damage has occurred. The die roll is secret, so that only the player who controls the crustal or attack platform knows if it has received damage. Collisions. When collisions occur, each crustal or attack platform involved may have sustained damage. A die is immediately rolled for each collision hex for each crustal and attack platform. If 1 is rolled, that crustal or attack platform has taken 1 point of damage. The die roll secret, so that only the owner knows if the crustal has sustained damage. Ziegler power range. When 1 or more hexes of a crustal are off the map, the crustal will automatically break up in the next crustal control phase. Attack platform time limit. All attack platforms which have not already broken up will automatically break up during the ground crustal phase over the 4th turn. Breakup. When a crustal or attack platform has received damage equal to its damage rating, it must break up. Breakup also occurs for other reasons. All breakups occur in the crustal control phase. The crustal or attack platform and all units on it are eliminated from the game. Central crustal. Central crustal never receives damage. Technocrat engineer squads. Combat. The engineer squads have attack and defense factors of 0. Taking control of crustals. The technocrat player may use engineering squads to assume control of a Ziegler crustal during the crust control phase. No Ziegler combat units may be on the crustal. The technocrat rolls 1 die for every engineer squad on the crustal. If 1 or 2 is rolled, the crustal is under technocrat control. The Ziegler player must tell a technocrat player how much damage the crustal has received. The The Technocrat player keeps track of that crustal's damage while he controls it. Sustaining control. The Technocrat player continues to control a crustal as long as an engineer squad is on it. If during a crustal control phase, no engineers are on the crustal, control reverts to the Ziegler player. If control changes hands, the Technocrat player must tell a Ziegler player how much damage the crustal has received, and the Ziegler player is again in charge of monitoring damage to that crustal. The Technocrat player may regain control in the same way that he got control of the crustal the first time. Neutralization. In any crustal control phase, after the Technocrat player has won control of the crustal, he may attempt to use an engineer squad to neutralize the crystal. This attempt may be made regardless of the number of Ziegler units on the crystal, as long as the engineer squad is present. One die is rolled for each squad. If 1 or 2 is rolled, the crustal is neutralized. A neutralized crustal cannot move. The Technocrat player keeps track of the damage. The Ziegler player may not regain control of the crustal once it has been neutralized. Central crustal. Central crustal. Control of a central crustal is determined exactly as control is for any crustal. The Technocrat player wins if he gains control of the central crustal. First of all, for the setup, the component selection. For the Ziegler units, you have 18 hexes of crustals, not counting the center. So I went with 2 group 3 ones for a total of 6, a couple double hexes, a couple single, and then 2 more 3 long hexes for the crustals. And then you have 42 attack factors of infantry. I went mainly with the groupings of 3. I have also a 2 and the 1 just to round out the total of 42 attack factors. And then, of course, you go 3, 6, 9, etc. up to your 42 here. And then you have 6 hovercraft units shown there. For the Technocrat, you have 5 attack platforms. You have 3 engineer squads, 6 crawlers, 2 heavy beamers, and then you have a total of 24 attack factors. And again, I went with the largest group thing generally, so 6, 12, then a couple of 4s and a couple of 2s, so 16, 20, 22, 24. For setting up the units, first I put the crustals kind of around the perimeter of the central crustal. And I put several units on this central one with the hovercraft. And I kind of evenly distributed the infantry and put some hovercraft on each of the crustals going around there to kind of defend the perimeter, I guess. And then on the perimeter of the molten hexes, you put the Technocrat. And again, you got 5 attack platforms, kind of evenly, approximately distributed the mechanized units as well as the infantry across those. And you can have up to 9 units, but if you have more than 6, you can have stress on them, and so I stayed under 6 units on each attack platforms and crustals. I'll just keep a card here to keep track of damage to the different crustals, indicated by their letters here. And ideally, for 2 players to keep it secret, when you own them, how much damage they have. But here I'll just indicate who owns them by putting a dot over Ziegler's or Technocrat, and then can indicate the damage. Similarly, I'll keep track of the damage to the attack platforms. Starting the game, we're in the first turn. Do Ziegler crustal movement. He'll try to just close around the center here a little bit. For this hex, he'll choose to move forward 1, and then rotate. That's 1 movement. The 3 long hex will do the rotation about the center. This one will also do a rotation about the center. And these 1 single hexes can move up to 3. You go 1, 2. He'll stay where he's at. So that's the end. That's all the crustals they'll move. So you go regular movement. He'll just stay where he's at for now. He's not going to do the movement. So you go combat. There's no combat happening yet. So you go second movement. He's not doing a second movement. Then we get to Technocrat, Crustal, and Attack Platform movement. The Technocrats don't control any Crustals yet, so they'll move their attack platforms. They can move them up to 4. And they want to get them so they're adjacent to some of these Crustals so they can start getting on the Crustals. 1, 2, 3. And then a collision will occur there between those two. 1, 2, 3, 4. The collision's going to happen here. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's moving quick because his attack platforms go away after 4 turns. 1, 2, 3. It's kind of a collision here. He's going to go after the same one. He'll have a collision there. Then we'll check out the various collisions. We'll keep track of them on the card here. First one. So on a roll of 1, there's 1 point of damage. First I'll check for the attack platform. No damage. On Crustal N. No damage. This attack platform. 1. It does take damage. That's attack platform 1. He's only allowed to have 2 points damage, so it's not good that he's 1 already. Then we'll see if the Crustal has damage. No. Over here on Crustal G. First I'll check the attack platform. No. Attack platform 4. He gets 1 point of damage as well. You know the 2 rolls on the Crustal there. And G. Takes 1 point of damage. And he can sustain a total of 3 points damage, so he's down to 2 to go. Technocrat movement. He's moving infantry, squads under the Crustal here. He's got a movement of 1. This machine has a movement of 2, but he wants to keep his units together, so I'll just move it 1. Then I'll move this unit as well. There's not any stress from overstacking yet, but he's on the Crustal. Down here, he'll keep this engineer squad on the attack platform for now. Move this. He can move up here. He's got 2 movement. He's got 2 movement. He's got 1. He'll just stay with the engineer there. Over here similarly, and they're within the stacking limits there, so there's no stress there yet. Keep the engineer here. The squad can move 1. He'll stay with the engineer unit. Actually, he'll move out of the Crustal. This machine will move up here. This engineer stays here. He'll stay. Oh, he'll see here. Move this machine. This machine, he'll move everything on here. There's going to be stress though. On this hex of this crustal, now there's 7 units. I laid them out here just to show. And since there's greater than 6 units there could be damage due to stress. On a 1, there'll be damage. No damage. If there was damage, you'd take 1 point damage to the crustal. And now Technocrat combat is happening, and it's all happening on this hex. I just set them out there. You total the attack factors versus the defense factors. So the attack factors are 2, 4, 7, 10, 13. Defense factors are 5. So 13 over 5. And you round it in defender's favor, so it becomes 2 to 1. On the chart then, the ratio is 2 to 1. Roll the dice. 4. Eliminated. That's pretty harsh. Eliminated means that all the defending units are eliminated. Taken off. And now just the attacking forces remain in that hex. Putting all the attacking units back where they belong in that hex where the combat occurred. To get crust control though, they're going to have to burrow into it. They got to find where the control center is and go within it to get it, and they can't do that until the engineer comes over here, so they don't have control of that yet. And now we're doing Ziegler crustal movement, which is interesting because they don't have control of this one, but they can try to mess these guys up. And it's a 2, so he'll rotate, and then he would normally move 1 forward as well, but because of his rotation, he has contact here and here, maybe in 2 spots. I'll see. So there's going to be some collisions that are happening there because it's in his best interest to kind of knock these down. He'll just swing it around like this. Swing this one around. He'll move this one back in a bit. Same with this one. Keep that one where it's at. Keep that one where it's at. And you'll also just keep this crustal where it's at. Then we see, check out collisions. Collision occurs, so when collision occurs, for every hex in which a crustal or attack platform has moved adjacent to another crustal or attack platform. Since, one of these was sliding motion, but it did move adjacent to it. This one was also sliding motion. That one was forward motion. So my interpretation is there's 1 collision here and 2 collisions here. We'll check these out. First on this attack platform. No. And this crustal. 1. So he's got 1 more damage. He's got 2 damage. He can take 1 more before he goes down. We'll check out the attack platform. Nope. Then we'll see if there's additional damage on this one. 1. That's no fun for the Technocrat. The G crustal now has 3 damage, and it can only withstand 3. As shown there, so all these units sunk into the molten surface along with the crustal. So that was a win for the Zieglers, for sure. for movement, they're going to send a hovercraft out here to reinforce one of these guys. They can move 4, so I can make it there. He'll stack on top of this infantry. He'll fly his Hoover over here to reinforce this infantry. And that's all the movement he'll do. Doesn't have any... I guess he's going to do a combat right here. It's 5 to 7, round in the defender's favor. So it'd be 1 to 2. On a roll of 1 to 4, there's no effect. 6. Casualties. For casualties, the defender loses 1 infantry squad, but non-infantry squads aren't affected, and he actually doesn't have any infantry there, so he's not affected. And then you do the second hovercraft movement for the Zieglers, and he'll decide to head back here to defend the central crustal. Attack platform movement. It seems they can move attack platforms without having units on them. So he'll do that. He'll smash over into this crustal, which will cause a collision. Similarly here he'll go over and cause a collision. You move this one over here. And these units are actually already on here. We'll check out the collisions. First, that crustal. No. The attack platform. Nope. The crustal. Nope. The attack platform. Nope. Then we do the technocrat movement. He'll be coming over here to attack here. An infantry can just move 1, and then he'll also move an engineer unit on there to see if he can get control of that crustal. Now we have a couple different combat situations going on. We have total of 7 versus 3 here. So it's 2 to 1. 3 casualties, which means the 1 squad of infantry is eliminated, so that 3 goes down to a 2. And we'll stack them both up here to show it's on that hex. And this battle at this hex, we have 4, 7, 13 versus 3, 5, 7. In the defender's favor would be, that's almost 2 to 1. But it sounds like you always round in the defender's favor, so I think that would be 1 to 1, but if I'm wrong, it would be a 2 to 1. Check the chart. 2. On a 1 to 1 would be no effect. If it were a 2 to 1, they would have a casualty. Then just put those back on there and show what's going on. The battle was on that hex. They have an engineering squad up there, but they can only try to take control of that crustal if there's no Ziegler units on there, and there are some on there. If there weren't, though, if they rolled a 1 and 2, they'd be successful, but they can't since there's Ziegler units on there. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of the play. That's Hotspot from Metagaming, their microgame number 15 from 1979. It's got a lot going for it. It's a pocket game, so it's not overly complex, but it's got some interesting mechanics in it. I like that you can move the different elements on the planet, collisions, see if there's damage or stress from piling up units. You have to plan out how you're going to move your forces across the different moving elements. And it's asymmetric, so both sides have somewhat different capabilities. And I like that all the information you need to all the combat is on the board there, and it's pretty straightforward as far as combat. It goes pretty quick, as far as trying to control the crustals and damage, etc. It's pretty straightforward, but in these small games sometimes you get some unique mechanisms which makes them fun, and that's what I like about it. Happy I have it. Give it a 6 out of 10. Thanks a lot.